All right, here we go. Sunday, August 28th. I'm Tom Novak. Thank you for joining me. As you know, if I'm going with a video here on the weekend, you know something's happening, and we do have quite a bit going on in our atmosphere. Lots of rain and some severe weather yesterday, so we made a good call on that. And now we're expecting another round of severe weather, and this could even be more potent than yesterday and yesterday evening. And this next round would happen later this afternoon and into this evening. I'm thinking somewhere after 4 p.m. and then really hitting hard between 6 p.m. and about 10 p.m. this evening. All right, here's your visible satellite loop. We're zoomed into the upper Midwest and just kind of wanted to show you that we've got some low clouds now. This is moisture that has been condensed and is still sticking pretty close to the ground here over central and southern Minnesota. And yes, these low clouds will erode eventually as we go through the morning and early afternoon hours. If they don't, then our severe weather risk will go down. But I think they will erode, and eventually we're going to have quite a bit of sunshine, at least into the early afternoon and mid afternoon hours. And that should heat up our atmosphere. And you're already seeing the hints of some thunderstorm development over southeastern and eastern North Dakota. That is a front that is pressing east and will be our trigger for storms as we go into later this afternoon and evening. The infrared imagery, of course, we're measuring the temperature of the cloud tops here in the atmosphere, and here are where our storms last night. I'm going to show you some rain totals here in just a bit, but impressive storms over eastern, southern Minnesota, and much of Wisconsin. Iowa got hit hard. And yes, here are the storms now over eastern North Dakota. These storms, as they continue to move east, will build and likely develop into a large MCS, mesoconvective system, that is going to affect much of Minnesota and probably Wisconsin eventually too, and portions of northern Iowa. All right, here were the rain totals now. This is up to as of 4 a.m. this morning for the last 24-hour period, up to 4 a.m. this morning. So a little bit more rain has fallen here over southeastern North Dakota or southeastern Minnesota. But look at some of these rain totals. We're talking well in excess of 2 inches, 2 to 4 inches of rain across a good chunk of western Wisconsin, so anywhere from Baldwin and Menominee, Wisconsin on south to the La Crosse area, really got hit hard by rain. And the heavy rains extended south and southwest into Iowa. So as you headed from the Twin Cities east and south, those were the areas that were hit the hardest. Much of the Twin Cities received near or in excess of an inch of rain. Speaking of the rain, here's a radar from the Twin Cities, and you can clearly see that rain is starting to come to an end now over southeastern Minnesota. Just some sprinkles now from the Twin Cities on south and east, and I think that's going to be the case here for about the next 6 hours or so before we start getting redevelopment with the thunderstorms. Here's your winds in the upper levels of our atmosphere. This is the jet stream level now at 30 to 35,000 feet. You can clearly see a well-defined disturbance now will be moving into northwestern Minnesota and western Minnesota as we get into this evening. This is right around 7 p.m. this evening now. And this is starting to take on a bit of a negative tilt. And the reason why that's important is because forcing with a negative tilt is usually more impressive. And when we can get a negatively tilted storm system this time of the year, that's a pretty good recipe, or at least one of the ingredients needed for severe weather. And look at some of these stronger winds up in the 70, 80 knots. So even though those are not terribly strong winds, they're still strong enough to support some severe weather across the upper Midwest. Now, when we zoom in to the Dakotas and Minnesota and western Wisconsin, and this is right around 8 o'clock p.m. tonight now, and look at the winds at about 20 to 25,000 feet. They are out of the west and southwest, and they are strong at about 50 to 60 knots. That's pretty strong for this time of the year. Now, when we go down in the atmosphere, this is about 10 to 15,000 feet. Look at how strong the winds are still, and they're now coming up out of the south-southwest. And then, of course, right at the lowest levels of our atmosphere, at about 5,000 feet or so, we have what we call a strong low-level jet now moving into southern and eastern Minnesota and western Wisconsin at about 8 or 9 in the evening. The reason why I'm showing you this is that we're getting a turning of the winds in the atmosphere as you go down and then up into the atmosphere. Here's that turning that's occurring this evening. Strong winds that are turning. That's another great recipe for severe weather. And not only do we have that, but we're going to have some energy in the atmosphere. When we look at potential energy in the atmosphere, and let's just go back to about 7 p.m. this evening, look at all the energy that's available over southern and eastern Minnesota and into northwestern Iowa. This is a prime area for thunderstorm development from about Bemidji and the northern lakes in Minnesota on south to the Minnesota-Iowa border. That's a prime area for development as energy moves up out of Iowa into southern and central Minnesota and then hits that cold front that'll be located right about here in western Minnesota as we go into early this evening. So yes, the ingredients are there for a severe weather outbreak across Minnesota, in fact, much of the upper Midwest, but especially Minnesota, western Wisconsin. Here's your future satellite from the NAM computer model guidance. And you can see not much happening this morning here over Minnesota, but watch as we put this into motion. Look at what happens at right around 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon, right here. 22 Zulu, that's at about 5 o'clock this evening. I'm expecting big time storms, and these could be supercells to be developing over western Minnesota, probably on a line from about Thief River Falls, Minnesota, on south to near Wilmer, Minnesota by about 5 or 6 this evening. These storms quickly develop and they explode. This is no doubt an explosion of storms this evening over much of Minnesota, basically stretching from Redwood Falls on north to the Canadian border. That's likely going to be a line of storms, eventually congealing into a line of storms, but with some supercells embedded in them in that line of storms. And then those storms just continue to steadily move east and then south, so that almost the whole state of Minnesota by the end of this evening should have received some form of thunderstorm activity. And again, some of these storms are likely going to be severe. That is why, and I put this out yesterday, but I have massaged this map a little bit, but that's why I've got good 2/3 of the state of Minnesota in an area that is likely to receive some sort of thunderstorm activity, and there will be pockets of severe weather within this thunderstorm activity. Eventually, as these storms move east into Wisconsin, they'll start to lose their intensity later this evening. But yes, I think the bullseye is going to be somewhere in the Minnesota Lakes country of central Minnesota. That would be Brainerd, St. Cloud, and then extending south and east into the Twin Cities, and then perhaps as far north as Grand Rapids. So hopefully you can get off the lakes here today, because by about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, we're going to need to really keep an eye to the sky and to radar as these storms develop. All right, that's your forecast. Hey, thanks for joining me. It's likely that I will go live later this afternoon or evening as these storms explode over Minnesota. Take care.